Round of applause for Jason and the LightBurn staff for a great assist. I don't know about you, but I've had a great time, met a lot of really nice people, learned some things as we always do. And so just a thank you to Jason and his team. It's been really good. So today we're going to talk about making jigs in LightBurn. And what I will tell you after the 5 years that I've been using lasers, it's probably one of those things, or one of those skills that I have, that it never ceases to amaze me on how much faster you can do things. Once you're growing your business and you're going from 10 widgets to 20 widgets to 500 widgets, knowing how to create a jig in LightBurn can absolutely be a game changer when it comes to production rates. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Just so you know, so I don't forget to tell you, don't worry about trying to write down what I'm saying. At the end of my session, I will flash a QR code that will take you up to one of my Google Drives. You will be able to download this slide presentation, so don't worry about capturing that. So let's talk a little bit about jigs and LightBurn. So a little bit about me. I'm Robert Kofid. I, along with my wife, own Computer Creations in Central Nevada. We've been in business for about 25 years, and in the last 5 years, we've been exclusively 100% laser products. And so I've also got a YouTube channel, Computer Creations with a Z. I'll flash up a QR code at the end of the presentation for that as well. A lot of my content, probably 95% of my content on my channel is LightBurn related. And so if you'd like a good source for LightBurn related instruction, please go check that out. I would love that. So a little bit we'll talk about the benefits of jig making, and the more you know about jig making, the wider your ability becomes to produce products at a much greater rate. And the good thing about jigs in general is once you understand the concept behind what it takes to make a jig and why you're doing it, whether you're making a jig this big or a jig that fits in a 24 by 36 laser, it's identical. It's just the size of the jig. The concept is what a lot of people struggle with. I've done over 500 one-on-one. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching sessions on LightBurn and lasers in general. And what I will tell you is, like everything else in LightBurn, there's 6 ways to do it. And so I'm going to show you today how I find that most people understand it the best, but know that there's other ways to configure the jigs, make them, that kind of stuff. It's just a matter of what you're used to doing from a learning perspective. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some suitable materials for jigs. Types of jigs. There's jigs that we're going to look at for Galvo type lasers. There's jigs for gantry style lasers. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Our approach is going to be a little bit different in that respect for between the two of those. The tools required in LightBurn. One of the nice things about the tools in LightBurn is there's only about a half dozen tools that you need to master in LightBurn in order to start making and using jigs effectively. So it's not like there's a lot of tools in LightBurn that you're going to need to know. There are a couple of tools that I'm going to show you today that I find a lot of people have never used in LightBurn, and once you learn them, those particular tools you will be able to use in many other places other than making jigs. And so we're going to talk about that today. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the concept of why would you want to learn how to make a jig. So your client comes to you, hey Robert, can you make me 10 keychains? No problem. We struggle through those 10 keychains. We're lining them up manually. We're flipping them manually. We're pretty much doing those 10 keychains manually. It takes us quite a while to do it, but we struggled through it and we got it. a client comes back and says, hey, Robert, man, I really like those keychains, but now I want 100 of them. And all of a sudden your anxiety starts to rise because you're thinking, oh my God, I know what it took for me to make those 10 keychains, and I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to make 100 and still make money. So the bottom line is, usually a lot of people don't bother with learning how to make keychains until their business starts to grow, where they're starting to get larger and larger quantities. And that's when you're either gonna have to learn it trial by fire, so to speak. And that's never a good way to learn, right? Because you're under a lot of pressure, you've got to get this product out. It always seems to fight you. And so hopefully, after today, you'll be able to, to get in there and learn how to do it. So, quick story. It's story time. About 3.5 years ago, I was working with the nursery locally, brand new nursery, beautiful. They spent a ton of money on the building and inventory. And as a good salesman, I went in there and I introduced myself and let them know what I was, these are the products I could offer, that kind of stuff. And they said, hey, that's a great idea. Why don't you give us 50 of these oval wooden coins, and I want you to engrave both front and back, and we'll see how they go. And so I did that, but in all honesty, because it was an engrave on a front and a back, it took a lot of time to line up those back-sided engraves. And so I got through my 50, delivered them, didn't hear anything more. 2 months later, they come back and said, hey, Robert, I'd like 1,000 fingers. They worked out so well. So it's one of those deals where, same thing, I struggled through the 50, but now I've got 1,000, and there's no way I'm going to be able to individually line those up. It'd take me weeks to get that done. And so at that point in time, that's why I have pretty much had to learn how to make jigs. And at that time, I had a fairly small laser, and so it was critical for me to figure out how that was going to do. And if it was just a single side, I could just put the material in, engrave it, cut it out, I'm done. There's no big deal. But the minute they wanted that double-sided engraving, now the whole game has changed. And so it just depends on, how much time you want to take, those kind of things. So one thing I will talk about is a lot of people think, now that I've got this jig made, how long does it take for me to set it up and use it? And what I will tell you today, once I show you kind of the concept behind your design and how you make it, setup is very fast. With the tools that I'm going to show you how to use today, I can take a jig, whether it's this big or a 24 by 36 jig, and in less than 2 minutes, I'm set up, ready to go. And so there's just some minor components that you've got to build into your jig in order for it to work every time you put it in the laser. And so setup time, if you build the right components into your jig at first, it's a piece of cake. It really is. So setup time is very fast. So let's talk a little bit about the suitable materials for jigs. And this will vary a little bit depending on whether you're doing a jig for a Galvo type setup, turret style, or you're doing a jig for a gantry style setup. Your materials can change, but one of my favorite ones is cardboard. It's a great way to, first of all, practice, so you can kind of figure out how to make it, that it works. We always have a mountain of cardboard around, right? That seems like we can't get rid of it fast enough. So cardboard is good, but it's not very durable. So if there's a situation where I've got a client that I've got, I'm going to do a bunch of, but I'm probably never going to do it again. A lot of times I'll make those out of cardboard because I'm going to get rid of it, or that it just won't last. So know that cardboard is good to practice with, but it's not something that you're going to be able to keep around and use all the time. Birch plywood is fine. MDF is okay. I've been starting to use this true flat ply that I really like, and the reason why I like it, it's got a coating on the top that you can wipe off and clean up. And so for thinner type jigs, I really like the true flat. Acrylic is a good substrate, but it's expensive. Any flat substrate really will work. HDPE, there's all different kinds of materials that you can use, but the real key is that it's got to stay flat, it doesn't warp, because that's one more element that you don't want to have to deal with when you're using your jig, is that it's all not flat. Now you've got to pin it down. It can create some problems for you that way. Talk a little bit about jig thickness before we get into the meat and potatoes here. Usually your jigs are predicated on the thickness of your product. So if your product was a small keychain that was fairly flat, we could get away with an 1/8 piece of material and set those keychains in and away we go, right? If it is a coaster, a slate coaster, and they've got the feet on the bottom of those coasters, it's going to sit well above this 1/8 material, so you're not going to be able to make a jig out of this thin stuff because the product is actually going to stand above it. In that particular case, I would go to 1/4" material. You can either start stacking up your 1/8, but the thickness of your jig really is predicated on what you're trying to contain as a product, and so keep that in mind. And so we've got two different types of jigs. On the left, we've got jigs for gantry style machines. Those are a little bit more involved in what it takes to make a jig, because there are certain things that you're going to add to your jig when you're making a gantry style jig compared to a Galvo style jig. This is a Galvo turret style jig, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to show you some of this stuff in action. So just remember that you can use jigs whether you're using gantry machines or Galvo machines. It's just a way to quickly place your products and turn the laser loose so they can make you money. So let's talk about our tools in LightBurn, and then we're going to get into designing this jig right here that's designed for a gantry style. This is just a aluminum business card jig, these black business cards, okay? And I'm going to take you through step by step and some critical elements of this jig that you're going to have to incorporate for it to work. So we're going to need the rectangle tool in LightBurn. We're going to need the pencil tool. We're going to need the laser position tool. The laser position tool, I find that a lot of people don't even know about. And once you learn and understand about the laser position tool, it can be an absolute game changer for other things. Like, let's say that you've completed a project for your customer and at the last minute they add something to the design. And you're going, well, wait, I've already taken it off the laser. If you learn and understand the laser position tool, you can put that product right back in your laser, resync it back up, and add whatever design elements you need, and off you go. So the laser position tool is certainly something that you should know about. The array tool, the offset tool. And so the things or rules that we're going to want to worry about is, and again, this is something that you can do it different ways, but I found after training quite a few people to do these, we're going to use absolute coordinates when we're making and using our jigs. I'll be honest with you, I absolutely hate absolute coordinates with passion. I typically use origin all the time, but when it comes to using your jigs, I find it's way easier, faster, to use absolute coordinates. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to always put targets on our jigs when we're designing for a gantry style laser. You know, some of you probably can't see this, but I've got a target in the upper left and a target down in the lower right. And this is for alignment purposes only. So you can sync what you see in LightBurn versus what's going on in the laser, and so it's an absolute critical step that you have to make. Where on a Galvo style, I don't need any targets, because I'm going to have a red light that's going to illustrate where those alignments are going to be. So you're going to definitely need one. You're going to want to design in targets right off the bat.
Hey, Robert, real quick. I noticed in one of your images you had target at the top left and target at the top right, but then you just now talk about a target top left, bottom right. Is there a difference between those two?
No, and those targets, great question, Michael. So you can really put those targets wherever you want. The idea is you want them as far away from each other, typically diagonally as you can get. And the reason being is the larger your jig is, the more critical that can be. And so you can, in this particular case, if you've got just hard 90-degree corners, you could use that as a target as well, where you wouldn't actually have to score targets on this. Any hard angle can work as a target as well, but most designs might not have any hard 90-degree angles. So if you don't have, your design doesn't have any hard angles, you're gonna have to put targets on it. So in this particular case, you notice that we've got, the difference between gantry and Galvo style. Gantry style has targets, Galvo style does not. That's a critical element for us to be able to sync things in LightBurn. So I'm going to take you through the design of this business card jig fairly quickly, because I want to give you guys some time for some questions and answers. So you'll notice on the top left-hand kind, basically all I've done here, let me see if I can get my pointer. All right, so on the left-hand side, all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle, and the rectangle that I'm creating is this one right here, okay? And it's basically predicated on the size of your business card. So I'm going to create that rectangle. Then what I'm going to do in step 2 is I'm going to just use the pen tool, and I'm going to do 2 1/2-inch lines. One of the lines I'm going to rotate 90 degrees, and I'm going to center each one of them, and that's going to give me a target. And I find that usually a 1/2-inch line, one rotated, and then put together, it works perfectly. Matter of fact, in most cases, if you do that, if you have a red light, when you line your red light to this target right here, if you get it in the middle, that red light will kind of disappear. You can see that all of a sudden it's not nearly as bright. You know you're kind of right in the middle. So we've generated a rectangle that's the size of our jig. And I would highly recommend the first jig you ever make is a little bitty like this. Don't make a 24 by 36 jig on your first go. You've got to prove the concept and understand what you're doing. So just make something small like this. And once you understand the concept, then you're good to go. The other thing that I will tell you is when we create the rectangle for the business card itself, I want to prove that, meaning I want to go ahead and cut this out and make sure that this black business card fits in here before I go any further, because the actual dimensions of this rectangle are critical, right? So you want to know and understand what that size needs to be based on what you've done for fitting your business card. So basically right now, on the right-hand side of your screen, we've got the 2 targets. We've got an external rectangle. Anything else out of this session, this next 5 minutes, will make a huge difference in the ability for you to make and use a jig and not have it be a problem. And so what we're doing here is we've selected the rectangle that's illustrating the cutout for the business card. And we're going to use the offset tool, and we're going to just bump that offset to the inside, okay? And the idea here is that when we do the offset and we create a new rectangle that's on the inside, we're going to say okay, and then what we're going to do from there is we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn that inside rectangle into a tool layer. And this is kind of the magic sauce of jigs, because now when we go to this next step and create these little finger cutouts that you see right here, if I didn't create that tool layer, when I drop this graphic into the middle of this jig, it's going to offset the center because of this little thumb hole. And so since we've dropped in a tool layer, it will assure that all of your graphics that you drop into this jig are going to be centered. Okay, so you're going to always want to use a tool layer that's just inside of whatever shape you've got. Because if you're cutting out things like a finger hole or a way to get your product out of your jig, if you don't do this step, your graphic is never going to line up. Okay, so this is a pretty much a critical step. Next, we're going to just generate a 3/4 inch circle. We're going to take that circle, we're going to center it on the left vertical line of your rectangle. We're going to use the weld tool and join those shapes. So now what I've done is I've created a rectangle with the finger cut out, and we're good to go. I generate most of my jigs with something that I can get the product out. Now, if it's a keychain and it's got a ring on it or something like that where I can just grab it and pull it out, then I don't bother with the additional step. But most of the stuff that I'm doing doesn't have an extra thing that I have to be able to pull that out. Okay? Okay, so everybody get why we did that tool layer? It's just because when we take that graphic and we want to drop it in the middle, it's going to truly be in the middle of the rectangle, and it's not going to take the finger hole into consideration when it's trying to center your hole. So the next thing that we're going to do, now that we've got that all perfected, we're going to array or make copies of this one design on however many you want. In this particular case, we're going to make 3 more. If it was a big jig, we would make, 50 more, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to group that black rectangle and that blue tool layer. We're going to jump into the array tool. Once we have the array dialog box open, we're going to say, hey, I want 2 columns and 2 rows. And that's going to give us, you're going to play with your spacing. Once you say okay, typically it's going to group that bunch of outlines. You can group that, and then you can center it on your large rectangle, and that way, typically it's centered. This is where you start to play with, okay, do I have enough room for my finger holes both vertically and horizontally? This is really where you're going to dial in the layout of your jig. And you would do it with the X spacing and the Y spacing. That's where you're going to start generating the spaces in between each individual business card outline. Now, we're going to talk a little bit, now that we've got this baby cut out and ready to go, how do I use it in my laser? But before we do that, this next feature right here is something that I find a lot of people don't use, and it's one of the reasons why they struggle once they start to use the jig. So we're going to go up to our settings, which I call the gear icon. We're going to go to units and grids, and we're going to turn on that snap to objects. Matter of fact, Jason mentioned this just before on where you're turning on your snaps, your object snaps. This is how you do it. So you go to your gear icon, you go to units and grids, and snap to objects is turned on. I leave this on 95% of the time I'm using LightBurn. And what this does is if I take a graphic and I want to snap it to the tool layer that's in the middle of this rectangle, if I grab it in the middle, it will snap to the middle of the area. And so typically your placement's going to be spot on. It's very easy to just go ahead and load that stuff. So here's we've got our jig design. The one on the left is the one that we designed. It's the one that we cut out. We're good. We've got that design in LightBurn. We've got our physical product here. There's one more step that I do before I actually show you how to set this up. You'll notice on the right-hand side that what I've done is I've taken the design that we've done and I've selected everything and I've turned it all a tool layer. And then what I will do is I will take that tool layer design and I will put it in my art library. And that way, when it's time for me to use this jig, I just go to my art library, drive it up, I'll pull it out, and because it's a tool layer, none of that's gonna go to the laser. Then all I have to do is grab my graphic, put it in the middle of those rectangles, and from a functional standpoint, I'm ready to go. So if you're not using your art library for stuff like this or for designs, I highly recommend starting to use the art library. There's so many things that you can use it for. It's very effective. So this is going to be where I'm going to describe to you, and I'll probably show you in LightBurn if I can get it to switch over here, how to use this. So now that we've got this created, and this next probably 10 minutes that we talk about is probably the most confusing for most people because they don't, it just doesn't ring with a lot of people. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna load that jig template into LightBurn. We're gonna make sure that we're using absolute coordinates. I'm gonna put this down and use the other one here so I can describe. Everybody hear me okay? We're still good? Okay. So I've got my physical jig. I've got into LightBurn. I pulled out that template onto the desktop in LightBurn. And I'm going to take that jig design. I'm going to put it wherever I want in LightBurn, probably in the middle of the design space towards the front. Okay. I'm going to make sure that my LightBurn is in absolute coordinates, and we're going to use the laser position tool. So I'm going to go over to the left-hand side, and I'll show you this in LightBurn in just a minute. The laser position tool looks like kind of a Google icon. It looks like a little balloon with a dot in the middle of it. Let's assume that your laser is homed. It's either in the top left or right-hand corner. I'm going to click the laser position tool and I'm going to zoom in on this top left-hand target that I designed in LightBurn. And I'm going to click right in the middle, right in the center of that target. And what's going to happen is your laser head is going to move to where it thinks that is in LightBurn. Then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my physical jig, I'm going to put it in the bed of my laser, and I'm going to line this up to the red light. So the thing that a lot of people try to do is they put this in their laser and they try to line up the red light with the target. So sometimes it's hard to do that because of the movement of the laser. It's much easier just to know or show LightBurn, hey, this is where the first target is, and take the jig, the laser head, right? So now I've placed this in the laser. I've got my red light right in the middle of this very first target. I'm good to go. I'm going to go ahead, select the laser position tool a second time, and I'm going to zoom in on LightBurn, and I'm going to select the intersection of this target right here, and the laser head is going to go from this down to here. Now chances are it's not going to be perfect, probably not going to be completely lined up. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put my thumb, I'm going to hold this corner so it doesn't move. And I'm going to just slightly move my jig on this lower right-hand corner to line that up. And once you do that, what you've done is you've synced the desktop or your LightBurn screen with what's going on in your laser. Now, what I'll do, I'll take it a step further. After I think I've got these two done, I might pick a 90-degree corner. Now, I'll go to LightBurn. I will zoom into this corner right here. I will use my laser position tool and click this corner right here. And if my laser goes from here right up to this corner, I know that now I've got my desktop LightBurn synced with what's actually going on in the laser. And really, that's all there is to it, meaning that at that point, I will pin this down, secure it so it doesn't move, because if this moves at any time during the process, it's not gonna work right. You're gonna get all of your graphics are gonna be off, and so, I put it in, I drive the laser head to that first target, I place the jig, target underneath the red light, I drive the laser over to the second target. I might have to adjust it a little bit based on how far off it is. And then I will drive with the laser position tool. I will drive to maybe a point like this or a point like this. Typically 90-degree corners are typically best if you can do that. And so once you've kind of verified your setup, then it's a matter of just dragging your, verifying, loading, and away you go. And so that's really as simple as it gets. You're always going to want an inside tool layer. You're always going to want to put targets on your jigs. And any questions? We've got about 13 minutes, so if you want to spend a little time on the Galvo stuff.
Go ahead. Do you want to, after you're done designing the jig, do you want to lock those in LightBurn?
You can, yep, you certainly can. Because remember, once you design and cut this out, if you modify this in any way in LightBurn, you're done. Yeah, so the bottom line is, and when I will save, I'll save that file, so I'll have two things in that file. I'll have my cut file, I'll have my tool layer file, so I'll have two basically designs of this. And that way, if I ever need to modify it or anything, I can just pull it up, I can modify it, recut it out. Or if you make it out of cardboard, you're gonna need to cut it out time and time again. And so, yeah, you just gotta be very careful when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so, if you haven't, anybody in here hasn't used the laser position tool, just kind of curious. Okay, so I will tell you that once you learn the laser position tool, things get a lot easier, especially if your clients are adding design elements after the fact. You can go right back and say, okay, where is that S? And it'll show you, and then you just take your design and place it where it illustrates in LightBurn, and away you go. So let's talk a little bit about Galvos. Galvo jigs are one of my favorites. And so I'm going to click here. We'll see if we can get this little video going. This is just going to show you kind of what this does. So this is a Galvo style turret. It's designed to sit on top of a rotary. Okay? So you've got the rotary up here, and this turns horizontally. So you've got your design coming down here. And you'll see, I'll just show you just a quick second here of what this does. You can see that it's engraving, and once it's done, it's going to go ahead and just advance one position. And start all over, okay? So same kind of concept, except the jig is physically moving because the head cannot, okay? And so it really is kind of a nice thing. Now, you've got what they call turret style jigs like this, where you actually incorporate a rotary. Then you've got jigs like this that are just, you're bolting down to the breadboard, it never moves, and it functions a lot like the jig that we just did, okay? There's a little bit more of a design element here because your hub design is critical, meaning that there's some specific things that you're going to need to do in order to get this hub design. I don't care about the rest of it. It's basically a circle and, whatever products you're going to go ahead and engrave. I'll show you that too, but it's this hub assembly that throws people. So I'm going to go over how you design that right quick. So one of the first things you're going to have to do, whether you've got, if it's a grip style jig, so whether it's a roto-boss or a lens digital, it doesn't really matter, or if you have an old D80 chuck style, instead of circles here, you're going to have rectangles. That's all the difference is, okay? And what I found that the centering distance from the pins, the center of the pins to the center of the rotary, almost all of them are right around an inch. So you can use a 1-inch measurement if you want to. The only other thing you're gonna have to determine is the size, the diameter of the pin, depending on manufacturer you use, okay? So there's two things I'm gonna need to know. I'm gonna need to know what's 1 inch, and I'm gonna need to know the diameter of the pins that you're gonna actually sit this down on, and we're gonna start to design it. So what I've done, top left, I've taken a pin size, which in my particular case was a 0.52. I'm gonna draw a circle with 0.52. That red line that you see is 1 inch long, and then the bottom little bitty circle is just a placeholder. It's gonna illustrate the absolute center of this turret jig, okay? It's just a placeholder so we can tell LightBurn, and I want you to rotate these 3 circles around this center point. And so what I've done is I've snapped the large circle and the small circle to the ends of that 1 inch line. Okay, that's critical. Then at this point, I'm going to use, instead of the rectangular array tool, I'm going to use the circular array tool, and you can see the little icon on there in the bottom. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top circle and hold down the shift key and the small little circle that illustrates the center of the jig, and it's going to say, you know, how many times are we going to replicate that circle? And if it's a lens digital, or if it's a hybrid, it'll be 3. If it's a Rotoboss, it'll be 4. If it's a Chinese rotary that's got the jaws, it'll be 3. And that's really the only difference you've got to determine is how many jaws you're going to have. Then all I'm going to do is I've got this hub assembly created now, and then based on what my product is, I'm going to have to figure out how big a circle I need. And I'm going to snap that circle to the middle, to the center point of that hub. I'm going to drop in my design. I'm going to use a rotary array tool to do pretty much the same thing that I did for the hub. And I'm going to fit as many as I can. Now, for some reason, if that doesn't work out, the only thing I would have to do is roll a circle until my product would fit. And at that point, I would make, you notice that this is a thicker jig. It's because what I did is it's got 2 pieces. The first piece is just a circle with the hub layout. And then the second piece is the cutouts for your product. Glue them together, good to go. And so the other thing that you'll keep in mind if you're going to do something like a turret jig is this hub assembly design you want to save separately, because you will use that hub assembly on every other jig that you do, right? So, I, again, have this designed separately in my art library. And then when I want to make a new turret jig, I drag that out and basically design accordingly. But I know that when this hub assembly gets cut out, it's going to fit on the floor. Okay, this is something that we talk a little bit about. So and I will tell you, it's kind of a gotcha in LightBurn. So if you guys, I'll get you a question in just a second. If you had your laptop right here and you opened it up, you went to LightBurn, and you looked for repeat marking, you're not going to find it. The only time repeat marking shows up is when you actually have that rotary connected. So just understand that you won't see this repeat marking feature unless your rotary is physically connected to your laptop. A lot of people go to start to play with this thing and they go, well, I don't have it. And that's because LightBurn is not sensing that there's a rotary connect. That's the other thing, that if you're going to be using turret style jigs, most people think that you set this process up in the rotary setup. That's not the case. Okay? You don't do anything in the rotary setup like you normally would when you use the rotary for anything else. Okay? So in this particular case, if you're gonna use a Galvo setup, you're gonna have your rotary right here. You don't do anything in rotary setup at all. It's all under where I'm showing you here under laser tools repeat marking. Once you get into that repeat marking, then you go in your setup from there. And all you're telling it is, how many times do you want me to stop? So in this particular case, I would go into rotary, I would say, I want you to rotate from 0 to 360. I've got 10 stops to make. It's going to calculate the number of degrees that it needs to rotate every time it advances. And all I'm doing is when I put this in my Galvo, I will have a red light outline with my design. I will line it up and I'm ready to go. It's very fast and easy to do these. Matter of fact, before I forget, I've got some pins up here. You guys are more than welcome to come get them after the presentation. If you've got any questions, since we're going on lunchtime, we're going to be in pretty good shape. Be happy to talk to you about anything like that. So here is my link for my computer creations for my YouTube channel and also our Facebook business page. I'll leave that up for a minute, and then I'm going to flash up the way you can go ahead and download the presentation. Everybody get 2 minutes to do that. While we're doing that, any questions? I know you had a question.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So for the Galvo jig that you have in your hand for the hubs and work, are you aware of any like quick release system? If I need to switch jigs?
Yeah, so usually the way this works is the way a chuck style rotary works. All I'm doing is there's a ring underneath the jig itself. And all I'm doing is I'm adjusting where these holes are. And so it literally is quick release, meaning all I'm doing, I've got the 3 fingers sticking up. I'm going to slide this down. Then I'm going to position my jig. But it's strictly a friction fit. So the nice thing about that is once you get this slid down on your chuck style jig, you're just adjusting that ring to adjust the tension on these fingers so there's not any play. And yeah, it works really easy. That's one reason why you want to be fairly accurate with your circles, so they fit kind of snug down on those fingers. Everybody got this? And there's the download the presentation. Go ahead.
So if we have the rotating table on the Galvo, is that the same thing? We just make a couple holes in it instead of the 3 holes?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, the hub assembly is the absolute key to what you're talking about. So if you got another way that it's turning it at, the hub
Yeah,
assembly.
it's just a rotating table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it rotates this way.
Or it's a flat table.
Gotcha. Yep. Yep.
So instead of turning through the chart, I was thinking you're using like a model for.
Yeah, if it was this way,
Yeah.
it'd be the same.
Yeah, it's just.
Yep, it would be exactly the same. Yeah, you could mount this horizontally and then engrave this way, and it will turn this way, right?
Right.
Yep. Yep, it would be exactly the same way. All right, any other questions?
So going on with, when you're looking up with the back of the entrance, one of the things that I designed, so if I have to do a haircut, and that has to be removed from the so the back is from the other things, it's not, how would you rent it up to line up, right in the spot, and sit it over the line, let's do a proposal. So then I open the sheet that can sit in the spot and make sure it lines up with that. And then I can pull it out.
And you're saving those points in the move tab, right?
Yeah, in the move back, save those points, they go right to that first one, they call it one, patching, 2, and then I just do those for my things, turn around, up and I'm off. So it's not a bunch of.
Yep.
Once you get it, it's set, you're on the money.
Yeah, well, that's a great way. And for any of you that don't know, if you go to your move tool and you have a special spot on your laser honeycomb that you always want to return to, if you go into your move tab, you can save those coordinates and name it. And then all you've got to do is just, drop down list, select that, whatever you named it, and say go, and it will drive it right to that very specific, location. It's a pretty sweet setup. That's great. Appreciate that.
I mentioned that, I didn't understand you're setting up specific points which are originally related to.
Yeah, so let's say that there's let's say that I do a lot of this, and I want to just position, I want the laser head to go to where this is gonna always be on your honeycomb. You can actually go to your move tab and say that point in the move tab, and then it's selectable. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.